Hello, my name is Bryan Lomax. I'm going to be talking about the book of Numbers, and I'm just going to be listing 10 things that I feel I've learnt whilst reading Numbers. So, number 1, the importance of asking ourselves why. Why do we do the things that we do? In the first couple of chapters of Numbers, God asks Moses to take a census. Moses obliges. I think it's important to take stock of the things we have in our lives, but in this instance, the census is being taken so that the Israelites can see all of that God has done for them. David, later on in the Bible, he takes a census of his own volition, but it's out of pride, it's out of his own glory to take a look at what he feels he's done for the nation, whereas in this sense here in Numbers it's to look and take stock of the blessings that God has given to the Israelites. I think it's important that we learn to ask ourselves why we're doing the things that we're doing. Is it for our glory or is it for the glory of God? Number 2, God uses the least of us. The Levites were the smallest of the 12 tribes of Israel, yet it's the Levites who God chooses to do the most sacred of work in the temple. Number 3, our gifts are for God's glory, not our own. In chapter 12, Miriam, who is a prophet, tries to put herself on equal footing with Moses. She forgets that the visions and the dreams she's given and the ability that she's given to interpret them is actually given to her as a gift from God. And that gift is to be used for God's glory, again, not her own. Number 4, do not let your fear control you, but trust in the Lord. The Israelites saw time and time again how God brought them out of bad situations. Yet when it came time to trust in Him to bring them into the promised land, they gave in to fear. This cost them 40 years of wandering in the desert. Number 5, it's not always easy at the top. I think we all at some time think that we should be the ones at the top, the ones making the decisions. I think we see this all the time when we look at our governments and our politicians. We often criticise the decisions they make. But as we learn through Numbers, it isn't so easy being in that position. What makes Moses such a great leader is that despite the constant moaning and distrust and resentment from the Israelites, he is always pleading their case before God. Number 6, there is a time to fight and there is a time to turn away. In chapter 20, Moses and the Israelites decide to go around the Edomites instead of standing and fighting when the king refuses to let them through. This is despite having won many battles that God has asked them to go into. And I think this shows really that there is a time to fight, and it's when God calls us to do so. And it's usually when other people are being oppressed. So it's not for our own needs, but again for the glory of God. This really just teaches us something about choosing our battles and not being too eager to just jump into a fight, but analysing it and asking, is it right? Number 7, God does not always rid us of hardship, but gives us a way through it. This is perfectly exemplified in verses 8 and 9 of chapter 21, when the Israelites ask for God to take away the snakes that have plagued them. But instead of doing that, God gives them the means to combat the venom specifically, rather than removing the snakes. When we go through hardship, it builds character and spiritual maturity because it forces us to turn to God to get us through it. It keeps us dependent on Him. Number 8, God can use anyone, including the most unlikeliest of people. We see this in the way that God uses Balaam to deliver his message to Balak. We can often overlook people because we know their history, we know their circumstances, and as a result we get a bit judgmental. But it's important to remember that God can overlook these things, and despite anyone's history, God can use them. Number 9, gather, suspend, sacrifice. This is what the people do during the Feast of Tabernacles in chapter 29, and it offers us quite a good practice to follow. We should get into the habit of gathering together as a people, whether that's with your church or in a house group or whatever, but it's important to have people who share your faith in your life. Gather together with these people and suspend what you are doing. We get so caught up with work and with life that it can often get in the way. I think it's important to set aside times where we gather together and suspend all the other things that we're doing. And during that time, make sacrifices. Obviously the world has changed an awful lot since the time that Numbers was written. So when we sacrifice the things in our lives that are important to us. So things that you would normally do, things that I guess take over your life, hobbies I guess, in my case it'd be watching films. Suspend that, just sacrifice it to God and give Him your time instead. I think this is a very good practice just to get our minds and our hearts right with God. And that's what the Feast of Tabernacles was about. Gather, suspend, sacrifice. Finally, number 10. Do not make assumptions about other people's motives. This is what Moses does in chapter 32, when the Gadites, Reubenites and the half-tribe of Manasseh decide that they want to settle in the land east of the Jordan instead of entering the Promised Land. Moses berates them for it, and he sees it as cowardice that they're trying to get out of the battle that is about to ensue, and he jumps to that conclusion before giving them a chance to speak, really. But these tribes make a promise to Moses and to the Israelites that they will enter the Promised Land with them, enter into battle, help them take the land before settling back east of the Jordan. And I think before we jump to conclusions, as Moses does here, we need to do the same thing. We need to give people a chance to explain their motives. And even if they don't, just don't assume that you know their motives. Okay, well, that's the 10 things that I feel I've learned personally from the book of Numbers. I think I've learned a lot more than that, obviously, but for the sake of this programme, I wanted to condense it down. Give it a read and let me know what you've learned. Comment below, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.